the edition of the African Men's Competitions is definitely more than 10. All right. In fact, in total, I think we have more than 10. Let's say more than 12 of them. All right. But I can tell you for a fact that out of that number or more, the Super Falcons have won the highest number of this competition. In fact, they've got about 9 African Men's Cup of Nations titles. 9 out of probably a possible 10 for them now, right? So hopefully tonight we'll know whether they are capable of winning the 10th edition of this African Cup of Nations for them, right? I keep missing it up, but then don't get it twisted. I'm talking about the Super Falcons. Overall, the competition is more than 10 times. The competition has been played more than 10 times. Let's just leave there. Let's talk about the Super Falcons and, of course, the American counterpart. Starting from the American counterpart, well, the Americans have, of course, played a couple of matches in this year's edition of the African Women's Cup of Nations. What Americans have been largely clinical, but one problem they've had is, of course, at their back. They've, of course, leaked a lot of goals in this competition, which is something that the Super Falcons hopefully would, of course, want to capitalize on. Well, on the average, the Americans, of course, at least considered a goal, aside from one match so far. They beat Senegal in, of course, the middle of this competition, 1 goal to 0. Right? They have, of course, failed just once not to concede a goal in that match against Senegal out of the 5 matches that they have competed in. Well, it's not been easy tournament for them in any way, but they have one thing they've done for themselves in this edition of the African Men's Competition is, of course, the grind out results, and they've always done that in this competition. So, which is something that the Super Falcons will have to be wary of. And of course, in the last match, it was against Ghana, it was African opponents, just our neighbors, right? But then it was a difficult one for them. It ended 1-1 before they won on penalties 4-2. So it's also something that the Super Falcons have to very much look out for. We know the Americans in times past, where we have met just a couple of times, which of course didn't end well for us. In fact, we had 2 red cards in that game. It was, of course, another edition of the African Men's Cup of Nations. But this time around, it's, of course, a revenge mission for the Super Falcons, and we hope to win and then probably beat them silly and then show them that we are, of course, indeed the queen of African women's football. So for the Super Falcons, they've also played about 5 matches. Out of that 5, they have, of course, failed to win only once. Yes, they failed to win only once, and it was that 0-0 draw against Algeria. And then the rest, they have absolutely smashed it. In fact, in the game against Zambia, they scored 5 goals. It was the quarterfinal of the African Men's Cup of Nations. And then, of course, in the semi-final of this competition, they beat South Africa 2 goals to 1. It was a dying moment game coming from Michel Alozie, but then it was, of course, the worth the wait, right? So this time around, it's a different opponent. Yes, familiar, no doubt about that. Some of the players who have paraded at this edition of the African Men's Competitions, they have won